So I've talked about rebasing to Bitcoin and just setting a exchange rate of one sat to $1. And that just takes a politician, maybe it's Trump, I don't know, but somebody just to say, we'll let you redeem your debt for this. And that's it. I mean, how do you peg a dollar to gold? It's by decree. And pegging a currency to Bitcoin is the same. It just depends on the motivations and the necessity of doing so. I think when things get bad enough, every card is on the table, and we're seeing this, right? Some of those cards are bad cards. It's the rolling out of a CBDC like in Europe.
For decades, currencies were backed by anchors like gold, with the US dollar tied to gold until 1971. But imagine a future where the global economy is forced to rebase, not to gold, but to Bitcoin, where one Satoshi, the smallest unit of Bitcoin, carries the same purchasing power as a US dollar today. With a hard cap of 21 million coins, Bitcoin is emerging as the only candidate strong enough to restore confidence when fiat systems begin to fail. Samson Mow, CEO of January 3rd, believes this dollar-sat parity is not just possible but inevitable. If Bitcoin were evenly distributed, each person would hold about 259,000 sat. But in reality, due to early adopters and institutional holders, the average person may only own 10,000 to 50,000 sat. That would mean essentials like a dozen eggs could cost just 2 or 3 sats, pointing to a Bitcoin value far beyond today and a complete reset of the global financial system. The impact would be enormous. In the US, dollar-denominated debt would lose value, the credit system would reset, and Bitcoin holders would gain immense purchasing power. Globally, nations adopting Bitcoin reserves early would leap ahead, while others fall behind. Mo warns that fiat fragility and central bank digital currencies may only delay the inevitable, and that Bitcoin could hit $1 million much sooner than many expect.
Thanks, and enjoy the video.
There's discussion about will it be a quick transition off the dollar or a slow transition. I think it's actually going to be a quick transition because fiat currencies always die in a spectacular manner. It's just a question of when. And you also have to factor in that the US dollar is in a very unique position because it is largely digitized outside of stablecoins. Like, it is a digital thing. It's reached market penetration that no other prior reserve currency has reached, right? Like, it's sort of married itself with technology and ingrained itself in economies around the world. So it might actually take a few years, maybe 5 years, maybe 10, I don't know, but it will end, but it's taking longer than normally it would have. That a non-digital fiat currency would not have this lifespan.
Is that because we can essentially offshore some of the debasement required to keep the dollar monetary system solvent?
Yeah, well, if you look at history, like all the reserve currencies in the past were relatively centralized because they weren't digital. But with the dollar being mostly digital, right, you've kind of permeated every other country's financial system in some way with it. And in some way, every single other fiat currency is now linked to the dollar, right? Everything is a derivative of the dollar. If you look at the Singapore dollar, right, it's linked to the US dollar. The Hong Kong dollar is also linked in some ways to the dollar itself too. And then you have other countries that just use the dollar outright. So it's reached really high levels of permeation that we haven't seen in history before. So that's why I think it's managed to hang on this long, even with the astronomical amounts of money printing. But in the words of Lynn Alden, nothing stops this train. So it's just going to keep inflating. And it's just a question of when it hyperinflates. I mean, I've heard the argument that stablecoins are extending the life of the dollar because it's helping effectively deliver the dollar to more people in the world. But I don't know. I still hold a lot of weight in the idea that fiat currencies fail spectacularly. And that's just because when people wake up, they all wake up. It's not like we'll start transitioning off the dollar and the corner store near your house is gonna keep taking the dollar and changing their prices to like $1,000 for a Kit Kat bar, right? It's just going to be a quick thing once that thing hits. and they'll just switch off and take Bitcoin because they can't afford to not take Bitcoin. They can't afford to take the dollar at some point.
Cyber criminals are getting smarter, and everyday investors are the new target. You worked hard for your crypto. Don't lose it to a scam. Recently, attackers bribed offshore agents at major crypto platforms, stealing names, birth dates, even social security numbers. They drained real accounts in seconds. No blockchain hack, just human error. Once it's gone in crypto, it's gone. That's why ITrust Capital created the Premium Custody Account, the most secure way to protect your asset. It's a closed-loop system, meaning funds can only move between you and your account. Even if someone gained access, they can't steal your crypto. Backed by institutional-grade custody at no extra cost. Sleep easy knowing your investments are locked down. Click the link, use code DOSE7, and get a $100 funding bonus. Start protecting your future with ITrust Capital.
And I think Germany with the mark dying, that's a good example. It happened in, a year-ish. And that was a non-digital thing. So I think it'll be faster for the dollar to fail. But until that happens, it does feel like Bitcoin is extending it by integrating with it in some ways. So I've talked about rebasing to Bitcoin and just setting a exchange rate of 1 sat to $1. And that just takes a politician, maybe it's Trump, I don't know, but somebody just to say, we'll let you redeem your debt for this. And that's it. I mean, how do you peg a dollar to gold? It's by decree. And pegging a currency to Bitcoin is the same. It just depends on the motivations and the necessity of doing so. I think when things get bad enough, every card is on the table, and we're seeing this, right? Some of those cards are bad cards. It's the rolling out of a CBDC like in Europe, or starting to control the internet like in the UK. There are things that are happening, and you can see these things happening are a direct response to other things that they're trying to mitigate or distract you from. So there are a lot of, just take the UK as an example, there are a lot of societal problems. And now they're focusing on this one particular thing, which doesn't do anything for the other problems, but it definitely distracts and gets people enraged. But it just goes to show, like, every card is on the table now. But that rebasing the Bitcoin card is also, it's in the hands, and it can be played at any time. And that's why I say plan accordingly, because you have to be ready for when these things happen. And the best thing to do to be ready is to be in Bitcoin.
Governments under pressure often lean on tools like central bank digital currencies or digital surveillance, but these are only temporary fixes that don't solve underlying weaknesses. History shows such measures fail to stop currency debasement. Bitcoin, and to some extent gold, stand out as safe havens to protect savings from fiat erosion. Mao argues that stablecoins may delay the collapse, but once the dollar breaks, the transition will be sudden. Businesses, banks, and even nations will flip overnight, and that's when Bitcoin could surge toward $1 million as the world wakes up together.
Are you surprised when he signed the SBR into effect?
Well, yes and no. I think for him, it was a low-hanging fruit that he could just do something and say promises made, promises kept, right? It didn't cost him anything. It was within his power to do so with executive order. And he paved the way for, non-budget neutral acquisition. And I think that's all powerful stuff. I think what is lacking now, and many Bitcoiners are seeing this, is execution on that front. Like, where is the audit of Fort Knox? Where is the tally of all the Bitcoin held by the government? And I think we're still waiting for that. And where is the next phase in the SBR? Like, when are you going to put up a website and accumulate? So I think we should all be holding them accountable, but we should also be fair in understanding that governments are not exactly the most efficient, well-oiled machines out there. So maybe they'll get to it. And I'm more of a glass half full kind of guy, so I think they'll get to it, but we'll see. But I'm hopeful that they do execute on the SBR. But to answer your question, I think it's kind of expected. It was low-hanging fruit enough that he could do that, get a PR win, and get his donors happy. And then the rest is up to, David Sachs and everyone else to execute on that. Well, it's also a tool. So for Gen3, we like to work on nation state adoption. So we can go to other countries and say, hey, look at the SBR. And they're not going to ask, like, did they do anything? And we're not
Yeah.
going to tell them that, but we'll say, hey, did that. So why don't you do that too? And if you get enough people doing that, passing legislation, creating things like a framework for an SBR, eventually one of them is going to execute on that.
Yeah. Is it possible that the United States government is acquiring Bitcoin quietly? Because you'd think there'd be an incentive to do so. If they announce a purchase, there's that Omega candle.
I don't think it's possible. It's hard for any government to do stuff in secret. Well, things that are beneficial for the country, it's hard for them to do it in secret. Other things, it's much easier. Like you could do a lot of things in secret, but for something like Bitcoin, like an asset, it would be like saying, can you buy gold in secret? It's probably hard. You need to, because it's part of the financial system and you have to be all above board, right? Like, where did you buy from? How is it custodied? There's a ton of questions that have to be answered. Like, it can't just be Trump directing someone in some agency to buy and send it to his Blockstream Jade wallet on his desk, right? There's got to be more controls and process in place for something like that. So I think it's really hard for a country to sneakily buy Bitcoin, even though they should. But I think it's hard, just like it's hard for them to get to the point where they can't even buy, right? Like the city of Vancouver, Mayor Ken Sim has said that he wants the city to buy Bitcoin for its treasury, for its reserves. But he's said like there's 2 years of red tape he's got to go through to even get to that point. So, yeah, the answer is they could do it in theory, but in reality, they probably need to go through and cross the T's and dot the I's before they can really buy Bitcoin.
In order for us to rip to 1M, do you know what kind of tsunami of capital would need to come in during what kind of duration of time? Because I feel like there's a lot of capital that could come into Bitcoin pretty quickly. Do you have any estimates around that?
Hard to say. I think we should have been here already. So
Yeah.
I would have thought that the ETFs opening the floodgates combined with strategy would have gotten us there already. And this is why I'm one of the believers that there is paper Bitcoin out there dampening the market. So we'll see. But, nothing stops the train. It's going to go. The dollar is going to keep on inflating and Bitcoin is going to keep going up. It's just a question of when it all converges. The 80,000 coins that were market sold is a good indicator that the market doesn't care about anything now. Like, there's just too much power behind accumulation, whether it's strategy or other Bitcoin treasury companies or hodlers or ETF buyers too. There's just a massive amount of insatiable demand, and the demand is only going to go up.
The idea of dollar sat parity may seem extreme, but history shows that endless debt and currency debasement rarely end quietly. If one Satoshi were to equal $1 in purchasing power, the financial system would undergo a seismic reset, with Bitcoin's value soaring into the hundreds of trillions. Wealth would shift dramatically, and nations would scramble to secure Bitcoin reserves to stay relevant. For individuals, even modest Bitcoin holdings today could translate into generational wealth in the future. Mow's perspective underscores the growing contrast between governments tightening control with CBDCs and individuals choosing an open, decentralized alternative. Bitcoin offers not just a hedge but a parallel system capable of absorbing capital fleeing fiat. Whether the shift comes from an official peg, runaway inflation, or simple market acceptance, the trend points toward a SAT-based economy. The question is not if, but when and whether you're ready for it. Do you think dollar sat parity is inevitable, or will governments find a different solution? If Bitcoin does reach this stage, how will it impact your financial strategy? Let me know in the comments. For more Daily Dose Crypto news, check out these 2 awesome videos on your screen. Click now and we will see you on the next video.